mic check, mic check, mic check, mic check, mic.
say this with them. So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to Police Headquarters, and thank you for being here. I want to begin by thanking Governor Kehoe and for his leadership and his continued commitment to public safety. I also want to express my appreciation for Deputy Director of Missouri Department of Public Safety, Troy Murdoch, who served as our interim transition director late March through mid-June. I'm equally grateful for our current transition director, Derek Winters. I've had the pleasure of already meeting him and speaking with him on several occasions as he begins the important work of a smooth transition. So thank you, Derek. Today marks an historical moment for the future of public safety in our community. With the appointment of these board members, there is a new governance in the city of St. Louis and also the city of St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. As you will hear from Governor Kehoe shortly, these appointees bring a broad range of experience and perspectives with one shared goal: continue to reduce violent crime and support the men and women who protect and serve St. Louis each and every day. I look forward to our partnership, and I also look forward to their guidance. Thank you again to Governor Kehoe, and thank you to all continue to support this department. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the Honorable Mike Kehoe. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chief, and it's great to see such a large group of folks interested in this. It's certainly important to us and the people stand behind us, and I know many people in the room. I wanted to start out, I know the Chief and the St. Louis Police Department family mourn the loss of Captain Will Brown, and I just want to start off saying I'd ask you to keep Captain and his family in your prayers, and I know it's, Chief, it's a tough start to the week when you get news like that, so we'll keep Captain Brown in our prayers. Really appreciate Chief Tracy's leadership and for hosting us today. We're here to take the next step, as the Chief said, for public safety in the city of St. Louis. As many of you know, I was born and raised on the north side of the city, and the police community, anybody in this room who's been around me has heard me tell the story many times. When my father left, it was the police community who raised our family, who helped with clothes and food, and just they've been a fabric of our life, the city police department, for my entire life. My Uncle Jake was chief of police, and my cousin Stevie was a longtime detective, Stevie Jacobs. Many of you probably knew Stevie. So we go way back, and of course the guy who raised me, Dave Sinclair, was the cops' #1 fan. He loved all law enforcement, no matter where they're from, but especially city law enforcement, which he spent many years on as a city policeman. So Mr. Sinclair, I know, would be proud of this day. I want the St. Louis region to thrive. I want families and businesses to feel safe, and it has not been an easy few months for this department. In March, I was proud to sign House Bill 495, which included 25 provisions to benefit St. Louis and the entire state, with increases for penalties for violent crimes like sex trafficking of a child and stunt driving. And in that same bill, it placed a citizen-led board to oversee the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. This legislation was part of our Safer Missouri crime plan, which law enforcement helped us craft to help support the men and women in this department and across the state. I want to give a special shout out and thank you to Senators Nick Shore from St. Charles County, Senator Travis Fitzwater from Callaway County, and Representative Chris right here in St. Louis on the South County side for their work on House Bill 495. This would not have gotten done without those elected officials really leaning into it. We also had a lot of help from the Missouri FOP, the Ethical Society of Police, multiple law enforcement folks who believed that the contents of 495 were great tools for crime fighting across the state and really protected the backs of our men and ladies who protect our communities. Members of the business community were also very supportive of that bill, many pieces of it, and especially the piece we're here to talk about today. I'd like to thank city legislators who work with us on this legislation. We don't always agree on everything, but we all agree on supporting the men and women of this department and working for a safer St. Louis. I have been in close communication this session with Senator Roberts and Senator Carla May, and they understand these appointments are be announcing today, and I hope, and I asked them to watch what this board does, because one of those two senators will be their sponsors when the gubernatorial hearing process comes before us in our next legislative session in January. In the months since signing House Bill 495, we have worked closely with Chief Tracy, our Missouri Department of Public Safety Chief mentioned Troy Murdoch, who's a rock star and an incredible law enforcement person, as well as our DPS Director, Mark, very involved with helping. And I had a meeting with Attorney General Bailey today. I think the ink was not dry on the bill when General Bailey was reaching out to the chief, letting him know that Missouri's Attorney General and his entire office stands with him and is anxious to be their attorney. Attorney General Bailey and his team were working with Chief Tracy, like I said, from day one, and they've done a great job, as well as the chief mentioned and I've mentioned, our DPS Deputy Director, Troy Murdoch. We recently appointed Derek Winters to his transition director. He's with us today. You'll notice I told the chief, kind of laughing, he walked in with a briefcase, so the guy never stops working. And you know, we went back and forth on, many people in this room, especially my friends in the media, asked a lot about the transition director. How come we're not getting somebody sooner? We kind of went full circle. I took some advice from some former elected officials in the city who were elected officials under state control. The chief of Kansas City, retired Rick Smith, who worked under state control, on what that transition director would be. And we redefined it from being like a full-time job for a year to somebody who needs to come in and get things set up so the board can make the governance decisions. That's who you want to govern the board, not the transition director, and he's doing a great job. We want him to make sure the setting is right for the board to do what they need to do, and I appreciate Derek being willing to do that, and I think you're going to find him a guy that is going to work very hard. His father, I hate to say this in a room full of policemen, but his father-in-law was with the St. Louis City Fire Department for a long time. Now, we don't call them hose draggers or chefs, right? We call them firefighters. And so I'm sure his father-in-law is proud of him in this work with the city. As highly skilled operations professional in the business world, I'm confident that Derek will do a great job working hand in hand with the men and women of the board to ensure this is a smooth and orderly transition. So once again, thank you, Derek, for your efforts. Today we took selecting opponents for this board very seriously and wanted to assure that we chose respected voices from across the city who support the men and women of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. First, I want to thank every St. Louisan who reached out to my office to serve on the board. We had lots of applications. The interest was significant, and we believe this reflects the excitement and renewed commitment to removing politics from policing through this board of St. Louis citizens. The 6-member board includes the city mayor, Mayor Kara Spencer, and I can tell you, I just said this to the board before we walked in here. First of all, I'm grateful for the mayor to be here today, and I know she has a lot on her plate, and the mayor and I have gotten to know each other pretty well through some unfortunate circumstances. And I can tell you, anybody who's running for mayor and they run about what they're going to do for the city, dealing with an EF3 tornado that damaged up to 1,200 structures is not something you're thinking about. And on day 32, that's what she experienced. And I can tell you that I'm really proud of the way she has addressed that situation. And I couldn't tell you that St. Louis is in great hands with Mayor Spencer, and I want to just thank you. When we went by the Harlem Tap Room, which was destroyed 12 hours after the tornado, the mayor said, I'm going to take you somewhere you probably never heard of. I said, you kidding me? We rode our bike here and tried to get in all the time. But we weren't allowed in, Chief, so we were too young. The board includes 4 voting members, and I'm proud to announce these voting members to the public today. First, we have, and these are alphabetical order. Brad Arteaga is a successful entrepreneur in St. Louis City and has a proven track record of managing and growing successful businesses. He also has decades of active leadership and service on multiple civic and community boards, including the St. Louis City Judicial Committee and Friends of Francis Park and more. More importantly, Brad's from Baden. And so, you know, us Northsiders, we try to understand where each other are, and grateful for his agreeing to be on this board. Next, we have Sonia Jenkins Gray. She's nationally recognized in the human resources field. She is with, in her role in the city, she's also been able to be the chairperson for the Progressive National Baptist Convention and highly involved in the community. I've dealt with her husband several times on issues up here in the St. Louis area, and I'm grateful to have Sonia on board, and I think she'll lend a great deal of expertise in her human resources background to the board. Next, we have Edward. It says Edward in here, but he's known by Eddie McVeigh. He's a seasoned business owner and operator of Maggie O'Brien's, just right down the street here, Irish Pub in St. Louis. with expertise in contract negotiations, strategic planning, and team leadership. Eddie is an active in local organizations, including the St. Patrick Center, and near and dear to my heart, the St. Louis Boys and Girls Club. And Eddie, thank you for agreeing to be on this as well. Last but not least, we have Chris Saraceno. He's the owner-operator of Bartolino's Hospitality Group, which includes several full-service restaurants across the city. He is also the co-founder of Campbell Security and Services Group, serving households and communities throughout Missouri. Saraceno has also held several leadership roles with the Hill Business Association, the Hill 2000 Neighborhood Association, and St. Louis Regional Sports Authority. He also prioritizes community service as active members of several charitable organizations. And in case you didn't figure this out, the board is never going to be short for food. So we've got some great entrepreneurs. And also, as you remember in the legislation, what was very important to me is that we have a business owner. Now, at the time when we were developing legislation, we didn't know who the board was going to be. And it turns out that we have several business owners on the board, but we also negotiated for a non-voting member that was a business person that owned a business in the St. Louis city, but lived potentially in the county. And so I'm proud to announce Don Brown, who's the non-voting member of the board. Don is a lifelong St. Louis resident and experienced automotive executive, currently serving as a dealer operator of Don Brown Chevrolet on the Hill. Don has been deeply involved in the community through various boards, including the 3rd Police District Business Association, the Better Business Bureau, and the Friends of Kids Boards of Director. I've known Don and his family for a long time. I know Tracy's with him today. He really has a great way to help boards coalesce, and I'm looking forward to that car dealer on the board that knows what business is about and community safety both. Again, I want to thank each of these individuals behind me for the willingness to serve, and I believe these appointments mark a significant move towards transparency, collaboration, and a safer future for the city. Finally, I'd like to assure the men and women of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department that this action is to support them and their chief. The chief is the chief. He and his command staff will run the city department. The board is not going to run crime fighting. The board is going to be there to support the governance of this, and the chief and his team have done a great job. I've sat in this very room and went through his ComStat meetings, and the numbers you've seen him do with his team, and I know he'd give a lot of credit to his team and his commanders, have been nothing short of amazing. And we believe that this setup will only give them the tools they need to get even better. So I want to be clear that the day-to-day operations of this department remain under the leadership of Chief Tracy. The appointment of this board does not change the crime fighting and community engagement efforts of the chief. His overall strategies remain in place, and I know that he's very dependent on the men and ladies that work with him as part of the St. Louis City Police family and what they do in their communities and what they do to make people's lives safer every day. And I know he's grateful, as am I, to those men and ladies once again. The board simply oversees the governance of this department. We remain supportive in your efforts, their efforts to keep the community safe. Thank you to the men and women of this department for all you do and for all of your support over the years. I will always have your backs. This is day one for the men and ladies behind me, so we're going to give them a break from a lot of questions that might be out there. So I'd like to now entertain any questions that are out there for the chief and I, and we'll be happy to try to answer them.
Governor, for the residents of the city of St. Louis who don't agree with the decision to have a state-run board, what's your message to them today?
Well, it worked from the Civil War until approximately 2013. It still works very well in the Kansas City area. We've taken some learning lessons from that. And I think anytime you can take politics out of crime fighting and out of community safety and really let residents of that community be the voices of what's good governance, I think that St. Louis residents should be comforted in knowing that they really have a non-partisan, non-political board working with the men and ladies of the police department.
Governor, you call this a significant move towards transparency. A couple questions on that. Do you expect this board to hold regular open meetings, open to the press and the public?
Yeah, the form of governance that they'll set up, but yeah, I don't know that, I can't tell you that they've had their first meeting to discuss this yet, Mark, but I know that in talking to each of these individuals as we went forward, transparency was a big piece.
And if the Attorney General is the police department's lawyer, who then will make the final determination on when to release body camera video, evidence, police reports, things of that nature?
Yeah, they'll develop a policy for that and make sure it's consistent with what the public expects and what is right. That doesn't get in the way of the crime fighting piece, by the way.
Governor, a lot of the appointees that you have here are established business leaders, leaders of community in South City and Central West End and throughout downtown. What do you say to critics who might look at this slate though and say, where's the North City representation?
Well, Brad Ortega grew up in Baden, so I don't know how much north you get. I think that's a great step forward. So we had that in mind, to be honest with you, trying to find different pieces of people that would represent different parts of the city, and I can tell you Brad knows North St. Louis just about as well as anybody.
Can I ask, when was the last time you lived in North City? In Baden?
I don't know when's the last. I'm there, as you know, I'm involved in the community center on Mimica and Emma in Walnut Park, and so I'm there pretty regularly. I can't speak for when Brad's been there, but as you know, many of the things I did throughout my lieutenant governor's office was back in our old neighborhood. So.
Question back there.
Yes, sir.
Governor, what are the types of decisions that this board can make that you feel will lead to better policing?
Well, the biggest problem that we have is recruiting and retention of police officers. And by the way, there's a lot of police departments across the state and the nation that face those same problems. So my hope is that their number one objective is starting to work with the chief and the command staff on what they can do to attract and also retain men into the city police department. The police department is down several hundred, I think over 300 spots right now. And when it comes to fighting crime, we need manpower. And so one of the biggest pieces I think that they can play a role in is trying to make sure we bolster the folks that serve the city in the police department. I think they'll be able to put something in place that does that.
Chief, could you elaborate on that? What could this board do to help recruit and retain officers?
Well, that's why you take politics out of it. And that's not a slam at any politician, because I guess I am now one as well. But I think when you take business people to look at, and community people to look at what it takes to bring anybody into any business, what does the competition look like? What is the package that they're offered? The business community and I have talked about a lot of incentives that we want to share with the board that they could do that we'll be coming out with soon. There's a multitude of tools at the table, I think, that they'll bring a unique perspective without having the political lens on it that makes it a little bit more navigable.
What are going to be some of the metrics for success in a year, 5 years from now, that will solidify your view that this was the right move?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. The statistics that happen in this room, as I mentioned, continue to get more transparent and even more telling about what the chief's been able to do in fighting this issue so long. But the main metric, as I've said from day one, is when businesses want to come back into the city and invest, or businesses that are already here want to continue and expand that investment. When they feel safe for their customers, for their employees, and they think the community is in the right spot, that will be the metric I watch the most. The statistical metrics that the chief and his team put out about the crime that they've done a really good job with will obviously be one that we watch very closely. But the investment back into the city, to me, creating opportunities for Missourians and for people to live in the city and jobs, et cetera, I think that's the key that we need to really watch.
Chief, the governor mentioned that it's been a tough couple months for the rank and file for the officers. Obviously, policing is dangerous work. We've seen some police pursuits, some officers open fire at suspects in the pursuit of these folks. Would it benefit you or the department to have clear written policies from this board describing when to and when not to pursue or engage in that manner?
We already have clear written policies. So what we'll do is take a look at them, and if there's changes that need to be made at best practices, we're going to use them. So it's not like we're flying blind right now. We've had good policies in place. Accreditation of law enforcement agencies, we're one of the few agencies in the United States that actually gets their approval and certification, and they look at our policies. So we have very good policies in place, and how we use them, when we're going to be involved. And like you said, there's some dangerous individuals out there that are men and women do an unbelievable job each and every day. And you know, when they encounter them, sometimes there are officer-involved shootings because of the actions of the bad guy. So let's not forget that. They got to make sure that they're doing everything right. And some of these pursuits that have been happening, News media, when you look to the bottom line, these have been carjackings and armed carjackings that sometimes gets buried in the last line. And so some of the things that happened this weekend have been dangerous individuals that are armed with firearms that our officers had to engage with, and I'm glad each and every one's been okay.
This new law also gives enhanced penalties to people who are doing this dangerous driving. Why then has your department not made arrests in some of these incidents when there's been reckless driving in different neighborhoods? Just putting out spike strips and not using those tools, is that a choice that someone's making?
Mark, you're taking one incident that happened in Holly Hills and then expanded another weekend after that. When we had to encounter people go to a parking lot or an area where we had a large parking lot, several cars going there, and we were able to engage with them, put down spike strips, and hit about 50 of them. You got to do a tactical pursuit after that, but we at least want to slow them down to see there's consequence to their actions. If you take a look at just even one of our teams that are out there, they've made 222 arrests of individuals and 216 vehicles just this year so far, and that's just one of our mobile reserves and anti-crime units. And they're going out and doing dangerous work, addressing this issue of reckless driving, where they've gotten 67 guns, and I believe that unit spiked 75 vehicles, and we're able to bring 56 vehicles into custody. So you take one incident, let's not use that as everything that's happening, but these officers are risking their lives every day to look at reckless driving, officer-involved shootings. I'm really proud of the work that they do, and we got good policy in place where there are safeguards in place and when to and when not to engage. And that one incident it does not measure us for the totality of the work these men and women are doing each and every day.
Chief, will this governance change affect the SLMPD's ability and desire to continue with focused deterrence and stabilize now?
You know, I believe with this board, they want to see good policing. There's some things that there's a body of work that's in place that I'll be having a discussion on how we should move forward. I'm hoping, and through the governor has showed confidence in it. I know some of these individuals behind me personally and professionally from my 2.5 years experience that I've been here. I understand, I know that they have confidence in what we're doing, the way we're going. So focused deterrence, yes, that'll be a proposal that I'm going to say we should continue to do, because the successes that we're having here and we've had in other places, it does work. It's not a be-all, end-all focused deterrence. It's one piece of an overall comprehensive plan, and those are the things that as we move forward, and I'm speaking with the Board of Police Commissioners, I absolutely are going to make those recommendations, and we'll see where we go from there.
Governor, are you going to designate a chairperson or president?
I let the board select its governance. I think that's the best way to do it. You don't need Jefferson City micromanaging things in St. Louis, and these are St. Louis citizens. They know what to do. And I wanted to follow up with the chief. The mayor was on site at the tornado within minutes of after it hit, and her and I met at 8 o'clock the next morning, and Dennis Jinkerson from the fire department, Chief Tracy, already had a command center set up, and their men and women worked multiple days shifts without any breaks, and that was also a tough piece, all while understanding they still have to protect communities. So they've faced a few issues in the last 60
Governor,
days.
are there any particular things you want the board to have the police department do differently than it does now?
No, like the chief said, I think he said it very well. They operate on a set of policies now. It's not like they've just been drifting around everywhere. Reviewing those policies and really getting back to the other question, what can we do to make sure we bolster and take care of the men and ladies who are here, and what can we do to proactively try to recruit and build the department up to get to the numbers that we need to have.
That's all the time we have for questions today. Thank you all.
Hey, I appreciate everybody being here. Most of all, appreciate the board for doing this. These are unpaid positions. These guys are volunteers, and I was amazed at how many people applied to actually understand that and still want to be in a role. And it tells me that these St. Louis citizens and St. Louis business owners, they want the right thing for the city. And I think everybody in this room, I know everybody in this room wants the right thing for the city as well. So thank you all for being here, and I'm grateful to these Greater STL. How you doing, buddy? I see you have Nick still smoking with you. Yeah. Dress up. Came in. Thanks, man.
And Merv.
Hi, Merv.